Thank you, Media Ministry, for being heroic. We definitely appreciate it. I'd like to thank Sister Charmaine, Deaconess Charmaine Bogan, who definitely was very helpful in the planning when I first started talking about this. And I want to absolutely thank all of you who are here with me today. We are Macedonia Vessels Ministry presenting You Got This, Parenting Tips for COVID and Beyond. So, as many of you know, Pastor McKenzie and I moved here in about 2005, June of 2005, in Michigan, with our 3-year-old son and our 6-year-old daughter, and no other family in the city. So you can imagine that since it really does take a village to raise healthy, successful children, that I needed some help. We needed some help. Because as a parent, you're balancing time, stress level, attention, their changes, your changes, discipline, race relations, financial realities, job situation, all of that. And that's whether your children are those you biologically birthed or whether they were just birthed into your heart. So my husband and I have really appreciated advice from the family he was born into and the family I was born into, and definitely our church families. So whether it was telling us what was working for them or what wasn't working for them, in their work to help us make sure we trained up our children in the way they should go, I just am so thankful that we never really had to be completely alone doing that. So I wanted to make sure as soon as we launched Vessels that we made some time to share with the Macedonia family some of what has just helped us so much in our child raising. Our presenter, Dr. Carla, is here to share some tips that will help us thrive during the rest of this time together with our children at home with COVID, and also that will help us as we move forward after COVID. So right before I tell you about her, I'd like to tell you about our panelists. We have Minister Rainisha Bean, who is a licensed minister of the gospel and holds a degree in family studies. She has over 5 years experience working directly with families on parenting, household management, and behavioral therapy. She's a Sunday school teacher for our young teens, and she is a loving aunt. We also, you know, we could clap her up. Let's clap her up.
Yes.
Next, we have Sister Stephanie Maston, who is an elementary school teacher in Albion, a wife to Brother Philip, a proud mother of 4 young adults, Anisha LP Darius, who is graduating from Albion College, and our own panelist, Minister Bean, and is also a proud grandmother and godmother, as well as Sunday school superintendent, Sunday school teacher to our youth class, and our VBS director. Amen?
Amen. Amen.
Heart to you, Miss Maston, teacher.
Thank you. Right? Next, we have Sister Wanda Kim, who is Director of Kids at Home, Executive Director for Koinonia Faith Home, and Executive Member of the Albion NAACP chapter, as well as mother of son Zaire and daughters Chantel and Zariah. You know, Zariah is a member of my teen Sunday school class. So claps for Wanda. And last but not least, we have with us Minister Shawnette Spicer, who is a licensed minister of the gospel, a certified life coach, president of Living Your Best Life Coaching, a capital manager or the capital manager for the Battle Creek Police Department, and mother of Saraya, Amari, Asia, and graduating high school senior Ty, as well as grandmother to Joshua. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
So now for our speaker, Dr. Carla Addison-Johnson, who I call Dr. Carla, is a tenured professor at Western Michigan University. Whoop, whoop. She has also been a licensed professional clinical counselor for over 25 years and is committed to meeting the mental health counseling needs of individuals and families. She has spent the last 17 years providing mental health counseling to families in the Kalamazoo, Michigan community. Her particular focus has been on child disciplinary practices and parents who struggle with child rearing issues, depression, and anxiety. Dr. Atkinson-Johnson has published over 50 referee journal articles and book chapters in the areas of child discipline, culturally competent mental health counseling, and African American child rearing practices. Her research has garnered attention in the legal, child welfare, and counselor education literature. She has a forthcoming book, African American Child Discipline, Culturally Responsive Policies, that will be published this fall. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Johnson's current research regarding intentionality versus criminality in African American child rearing practices was presented at the 2019 Association of Family and Conciliation Courts National Conference. She has served as a child discipline expert witness in civil and criminal courts in Michigan and Wisconsin. Dr. Atkinson-Johnson is a proud member of Mount Zion Baptist Church in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Amen. And I am just proud to call her friend. Now turning it over as we clap for her.
Oh,
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
good morning. Good morning. Good morning. First, I have to say thank you, First Lady Justine McKenzie. So this is my sister friend. So we go way back,
Amen.
way back, way
Yes.
back. And first, I have to give honor to the Lord, who is my Savior
Yes.
and has
Yes.
blessed me with the skills and talents to do this work. So I give him honor above all. Second, also, I want to first give honor to the pastor of Macedonia in Albion.
Amen.
Pastor McKenzie, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you for the opportunity. And like I said, the McKenzies go way back. I remember the first Sunday they came to Mount Zion and they visited the Sunday school class that I
Wow.
was in. Pastor Troxler, I believe, was teaching the class, I believe, at the time. And so I remember that first day.
Yes.
We have been friends ever since. I consider
Awesome.
them my family. I don't have family, biological
Amen.
family in the Kalamazoo area and not this side of Michigan. So I consider them to be family. So we go way back. Y'all mess with them, y'all gonna have to mess with me. Just gonna put that out there. So anyway, moving on.
No, everybody's sweet to us.
I know they are, but you know how we do. We got to put that out there.
I know.
Just
Make it
because.
known. Just make it known. That's
Make a
all.
note. That's
Yes,
all. That's all.
Lord.
All in love. All in love. Okay,
Oh,
so
the people is.
that's right. You know exactly. Exactly. Today, I don't want to take up a lot of our time, but I do want to make some points that I think are important right now as we are moving through this COVID-19 period, and also things that we can think
Yes.
about and consider afterwards. I also want to one quick thing, thank the panel for coming and wanting to participate in this discussion,
Yes.
because I think it does take a village in how we all can think about how to help our families and parents. And then also I have to acknowledge, I forgot Pastor Moore, got to acknowledge Mount Zion, always, always, always in the house. But first, the first thing, exactly, the first thing we have to think about with parents, number one tip, is protection of our children. So let me just say from the beginning, first thing we have to think about is that in this situation of COVID-19, we have to protect our children first. So a mask is required for our children. A mask is
Say so.
required for our parents. In talking with a good friend of mine who's a primary care physician in Chicago who's working on the front lines, African American woman with twin children. And I said, I'm going to be talking, to parents this weekend. And any thoughts in terms of from frontline work, what you would recommend? She says, tell them their most important parent priority right now is making sure their children are going to be okay. When we watch videos and what we see on the news, and we see many of our children in particular that are not wearing masks and not protecting themselves, we are not doing our job as parents in protecting them. So that's the first priority. Anybody who comes in your home, if they don't wear a mask, you are not protecting your children. And so that's one of the things that we have to take charge first. We have always had to take charge of our community and our church community
Amen.
and also our home. And so that's one of the things that we want to make sure in the midst of that parents are responsible. So every child, the baby, the preschool age, elementary school age, teenage folks that share our name, want to use our resources and live in our space. That's what they have to do. So that's number one. That's most important. The other thing is too, she gave some very
Amen.
interesting statistics that we all probably have heard. When two people are wearing a mask, particularly when you are indoors, when two people are wearing a mask and nobody else in the house does not have a mask. So say everybody in the house has a mask on and you're, talking, have a conversation, 90% risk of catching COVID goes down. So that means you have no risk hardly in catching
Oh,
the disease.
Right.
Even if you're out in public, if the people you're with and you're talking to have a mask on, you have just cut down your chances drastically of catching
wow.
COVID-19. So that's one of the things I think that we want to put in our community is that people in your midst, if they have masks on, you don't have a problem. If just one person doesn't, everybody's at risk. Okay, so I just want to make sure I emphasize
Wow.
that. So that's something we want to take to the bank.
Amen.
That's tip number one. Tip number two is parents have a responsibility and want to make sure um, that I talk about this one. I'm skipping a tip because I want to get to the main one here. Okay, yes, parents have a responsibility to create an environment for their children that is consistent, that and has order. So I'm assuming,
Mm,
let's talk first that we're assuming you had this before we go into the COVID. And then I'll talk about the scenario when you haven't had it and we went into the COVID. So say you had that and you're
okay.
going into the COVID. How do we maintain that? So order and consistency, research has shown, is key for children across all developmental ages.
Mm,
Just for the fact that when they get up in the morning, they don't have to think twice. Okay, that means we've of course prayed over and make sure God has them, and those of course is our number one priority. But then but how do you put that into action? And so, as a parent, that the kid can
mm,
expect something to eat in the morning, whether you provide it or whether you sit it out and they can go get it. You don't have to actually cook the meal, but there is something for them to eat. And I'll talk about when there's a struggle, when there's no food. But just give me a minute on just kind of talk about order. And no, they don't have to have 3 meals a day. They just have to have something to eat that pretty much at the end of the day they're not too hungry. That's how I put it.
I need to
Um,
invite my
but
kids in and just
agree.
actually listen.
just, just get a little something and they be all right. Get some in their belly. So, and then that's it. But we're responsible for that. And there's before pre-COVID, they went to school. That was routine. No matter what they did in school, there was still routine and expectation that they were going. They came home from school. There were
Mm,
certain types of activities, whether it's church activity, sports activity, talking with you activity, or just looking at the walls activity. There was something at certain time of the day they could rely on. That adds safety to
right.
children. That minimizes anxiety. Anxiety, particularly anxiety, the clinical disorder, has to do with the sense of fear and unrest. When a child questions a situation saying that, what if, what happens if that, what happens if we can't, that means there's something in the atmosphere for them that's out of order. Okay. And so
Mm,
when it's out of order, they start questioning because, oh, the routine's off. I'm not sure, I see my mom or my dad stressing about them not being able to provide food. So something is not happening that normally happens. So their first go to is to worry. Okay. So we have to figure out how can we first minimize the impact of worry. Not that we take worry off the table, because sometimes that's something that we, of course, spiritually have to rely on to do. We physically may not always be able to do that, but we know who can do that for us and our children. You know, one of the in the Bible it says, be anxious for nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so when we
Sure.
talk about, when the word says be
Amen.
anxious for nothing, and then what we do know, we can petition God to what our worry is, and he will provide peace that will surpass all understanding. Most important part, it will guard our heart and our mind. So while for
Amen.
parents, it's guarding our mind, that allows us to be two steps ahead emotionally for our children. Okay. Because when
Amen.
God is
Amen.
protecting our mind with this, he's giving us instruction on how to provide in the midst of trouble, in the midst of struggle, in the midst of
Mm.
chaos. Okay, he helps us in protecting our minds to provide and keep the order for our children. Okay, so it looks something like this. That means that when CNN, MSNBC, and that person that's in the White House, because I can't honor his president, but person that's in the White House starts doing things and kids see it and people are talking about that and all, and the parent can't be the one that's more stressed out about it than the child is. Two steps ahead
Amen.
emotionally says that, oh, okay, but we know what God is in control. And you got to show what that looks like to the child.
Mhm.
Okay. And so that means when he's in control, your whole demeanor has to give us, no, God's got this. And so we're going to maintain and do what we can, because we know he's going to provide. If food is short
Amen.
and there's not a lot for us to eat, as a parent, call a girlfriend, call your boo, do whatever to have that conversation with us. Don't have the conversation with your child. Your child is not your friend. That is the person you are here to protect. And so when you're struggling, we have to figure out
Amen.
who can parents talk to about issues of concern they may have in the midst of this so that they can do what's required to shepherd our children. Another good friend of mine who is a
Amen.
pediatric physician in Biloxi, Mississippi right now, that's working on the front lines with our children in particular. And she says, you see a lot in the news about recovering, meaning that, we're going to have to recover things after COVID. But see, for our children, they can't recover something they never had. And so, we have all raised, when we were raised, we didn't have certain things like this that's happened. Now our grandparents and parents have moved through the depression. We've had some things in our lives that have been uncomfortable, been stressful, maybe drugs, maybe financial struggles, racism and the like that we have experienced, oppression. But
Mm.
this particular type of uncertainty um, will have a different way in which our children will learn how to negotiate. So basically, because it's happening at this certain developmental stage that they're in, it's not a new normal for them. We have to normalize what this is. That means we have to
Right.
normalize that this is what life is all about. Things won't always be of what we think they should be. Okay, so how do we get them to function with
Okay.
uncertainty? How do we get them to become more comfortable that mom and dad may not always be here, but it's okay? Because this is where what you have to believe, if anything goes left or go right, this is how you stay the course. So this is kind of what we do when we're in COVID. This is what we have to maintain when we come out of COVID or when the worst part of COVID is over. Because the reality is that if it's not this disease, it'll be another one. And so, and if it's not this situation, we'll have another because we know
Right.
things will come to pass. So that that part about being two steps ahead emotionally is important. The other issue is
Mm.
the whole discipline piece, and that is that before COVID, maybe you had a way that you were disciplining your child, and that is you gave them a whole lot of warnings before you gave the physical discipline. You dropped a bomb, is what I say, because you had enough, and then but you say, don't do that again. Did not tell you, don't make me have to come back there, and then they get what they get as a result of absolutely drop the bomb. Now, during COVID, what I'm realizing
Wow.
is sometimes parents are dropping the bomb first, and that's where the problem is.
Mm.
Because we're so stressed, our normal
Amen.
way as a parent is that I have patience. I got more patience to deal with this. I got other things I can do, so this doesn't really make me too angry. But when you're all in the house all
Mm.
day, and already, if there's nothing going on, you got a problem with being in four walls. I know I do. Drives me nuts, right? Because I can't get out, can't do things I normally do. And so we know when we stress, it makes it worse. So I think our
Yes.
parenting, we have to watch in terms of our patience and realize and say, okay, what do I need to do when they will work my last nerve? So we think
When?
proactive, when every day, almost on the hour, they're going to do something. So already think in advance of what's the plan. If the plan is, okay, I'm going to make them do this activity, or I'm going to go in the room, I'm going to do something so I can go back to my normal routine of warnings before I do what I do. Because I'm not thinking you have to change your routine discipline. I'm saying, how do you maintain whatever you were doing before? And so that we don't make things worse. Now, for families that were struggling before COVID and how we can help them, we do know that sometimes what we find is our weak areas become exacerbated in the midst of a crisis, right? And so we know if families were struggling with weak bonds, meaning that sometimes mothers and fathers were really struggling with their children, it's just really bad now if that was the case before. So some may have to assess now and after COVID, okay, let me go back and change the way I was dealing with my child, meaning that maybe there are more boundaries that I needed to set up. Maybe things were a little too loose and I need to
Mm.
tighten that up some. Or maybe things were a little too tight and I needed to loosen that up some. And so those are those assessment things that when we go back after being in shelter in place, I think that's the only adjustment we're going to see is that difference between being in shelter in place and not. I don't think there's going to be major changes in whether or not things are unsure. I think that's going to be something that's a reality because we just don't know. And maybe, quite frankly, that's how we always should have lived, is that we don't know always what tomorrow will bring.
Mm.
We know God does, but we don't know. Maybe we just
Right.
got a little too comfortable in the predictable. And we
Mhm.
believed more in the predictable as opposed to believing in our faith that no matter what
Mhm.
God decides to do, that's what we're going to do. And that's how we're going to focus. And so I think I'll stop right now for just some questions and things about just some of the things I just shared, in case I didn't give enough information or something.
I do have a question if you don't mind.
Hmm.
As far as change for, because I think a lot of times with children autistic,
Mm,
they change is difficult for
that's right.
them, period,
Hmm.
coming out of
Hmm.
routine.
That's right.
So, that's a different kind of parenting.
Hmm.
And so even with this, it could be like a culture shock
That's right.
for
Hmm.
them and
Hmm.
for the parent because
Hmm.
that causes behavior issues for them.
Right.
So, what would be a good way of handling children that already have some type of mental
Hmm.
or behavior
Hmm.
disorder
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
taking them out of their routine is
Hmm.
even worse than them having a routine?
Excellent question. So, what we consider are children that have, say, learning disabilities or even mental or emotional disorders when we're dealing with autism, when we're dealing even with other disorders that are commonly found in children. Schizophrenia is just as prevalent in children as it can be in adults. We see it more in adults, but it's starting to manifest more with our children. Anything that deals with it, how they may do and think differently. Routines are um, something that can be disruptive. And I think as much as we can keep a routine, even if it's a matter of getting the child up at the same time every day, that we may can control. Even though the house could be small, space is small, we can't leave too much, but what we can do is that we know we can control what time our children get out of bed. We know what time we may want them to do certain activities in the house. So I think we can start where we are with that. We're going to have some behavioral issues. I think maybe sometimes I think in psychology in particular, there's a heavy emphasis on making sure we manage and minimize behavioral outbursts. I think sometimes outbursts aren't always so horrible. The question is it disruptive for the
Okay.
child? Is it disruptive for your home? Is it disruptive culturally for you? Because sometimes the kids just having a bad day and they want to, act that out. Now, how can they do that, and release some of this energy and stuff? And it's okay. It's done in a respectful manner. No, they can't control your house, but how is it respectful? But they have emotional, breaking point like all of us, and particularly when they have when their social cues are different than ours. And that's what I think we have to acknowledge. Just got to kind of get comfortable with differences and how that is. But the biggest thing what I think I'm hearing you say is if the behaviors are either disruptive, how do we deal with that? But if it's not coined as disruptive, then the question is, okay, how much is it that is okay and acceptable for you as a parent? Because I don't think there is an answer on what is considered acceptable behavior from a child who is autistic. I think it depends on the parent's needs and the culture in which the child and the parent live in.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Amen.
Awesome. I'm Dylan. What about with teens? So with me, I
Yeah.
have an
Mm,
18-year-old in my home. So he's part
mm,
grown, part infant.
Yep. Yep.
And
You got that right.
so for me, I struggle because right now we're looking at colleges
Yep.
and trying to make sure we have all that right. And, just going through the whole thing and then also not getting them to sleep till 1, 2
That's
in the
right.
afternoon,
That's right.
making
That's
them get
right.
up, and I'm fighting that battle of Jericho because they like, why? It's nothing to do. And I'm like, it's the principle of the matter. You find something to do, you
Yeah.
get up, you start your day.
Right.
And to me, I'm fighting the battle of what is my boundary. I'm like, no,
Okay.
you just don't sleep that late.
And that's it. I think you don't go no further. I spent most of my time in work and dealing with adolescents and late adolescents, the age you're talking about. The biggest fight with parents is the issue of boundaries, and I think that is something that is non-negotiable. You don't have to, I think when they hit 18, 17 or 18, if you want your child to go to bed at 9 o'clock, is that probably something that's popular? Maybe not. If it's something that, some, researchers may say, well, you should kind of let to see what's comfortable for the child. Most children go to bed at 11. I would agree. However, it's your home. And so I think whatever routine and that you think is acceptable in your home, you are allowed to set. Now, at 18, the child then has some choices. And so they can either stay there
Okay.
or they can
That'll
go
preach.
somewhere else. So it's
Gotta
one of
say
those
it.
that I understand. Last I heard, the shelter maintains social distancing.
Mm.
and so, and so and
It's
I
a
know
bigger unit.
that's right. It's a bigger unit. Although I think it might be a little tight. They may not like this atmosphere there, but that is an alternative. And I don't encourage parents to do that, but I think that helps for them to get an idea of what they're really living where they're living and who they're living with.
Yeah.
In your home, you are the parent of that house, no matter what age that child is. If that child becomes 35, you're still the parent of your house. You dictate who comes in, when they come in, when they leave, and what they do up under your roof.
I think we should have had
Teenage-
the kids sitting in on this.
Okay. It's like, get up here right now.
And so, and when I talk with teenagers, because I do some counseling at family court and dealing with parents and their teenagers and stuff there, I think somewhere along the line, though, we kind of stepped away from our boundaries once that child turned 10, 11, and 12, because we start having more conversations with them. And sometimes as parents, we may get confused between a conversation and when we're teaching. Okay. So a conversation is, oh, how's your day?
Amen.
Okay. Teaching is, okay, I'm going to need for you to do this and I need for you to do it. Okay. Now I want to hear your, your emotional response on what you have to do. Not that I want to hear whether you feel you can do it or not. Those are
Okay.
that's more of teaching types of things. I encourage the conversations though. I think the conversations are healthy, but I think sometimes there's confusion between the two. They get comfortable and they can think they can weigh in on the boundaries,
Oh,
or
yeah.
they think that the boundaries are negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
The other thing that parents that I think, and particularly kids the age that you have, is that they start looking at other family situations and they start making comparisons. Saying, oh, well, so and so, this is how they talk to their parent, or
Right.
this is what goes on in their house. But we all know what we've heard from our own parents. Well, they don't live there, they don't pay the note
okay.
there. Run all that down,
Right.
and then tell them they can't roll their eyes when they hear it. So it's just the way
None.
it is. It's hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard, but just you continue to drill the point, but make it real clear that's a contractual situation in living in your home. I think once that's emphasized, it all goes back to the ability to live in your house. And I
Okay.
think that helps. It may come with some pushback a little bit till they really, but always put the options on the table about the mission.
Thank
Okay,
you.
you have to.
Thank
I have a
you.
question. I have a
Yes.
question. My situation is I have 4-year-old twin god kids, a girl and a boy,
Mm.
and we've been getting them every weekend since they've been 6 weeks old.
Oh.
So our problem is once they go home for the week, they've been with us all quarantine. But
Okay.
once they go home for the week and come home for us with the weekend, we have to train them.
Train them.
In our house, we do this, and in your mama house, you do that.
Okay.
So having them with us for 2 months now,
Mhm.
the discipline thing is an issue
Mhm.
because I don't feel like, I guess you're used to being at the house for the weekend, so that's just fun.
Mhm.
But trying to give them structure is
Yeah.
a fight.
So this is a little difficult, sticky, but I'm gonna keep it real. All right. So the discussion at the beginning, let's say before quarantine, before COVID, is when there was an agreement for them to be with you, for them to keep them during the week. And once that parent made an agreement for their child to go to another household every weekend, then already there was a message sent that they trusted for you in your ability to parent their children. But I think there probably should have had a conversation between you and them on how you both were going to maintain and have the same parenting goals. Because it's not, once it's every weekend, now you turn into a parental duty, which you say, which is godparent. And so sometimes I think to cut down on confusion, the two of you, both households, need to have an agreement on what's acceptable. Because if there is a difference, there's going to be confusion, period. There's nothing you can do, and there's nothing they can do unless the two of you have decided on some agreement. Because the question is, one, I would question why, a parent would, and it's just me, I don't know them. A question would be why every weekend there's an agreement to go somewhere and all weekend long, and as opposed to, I can see visiting, but that's not necessarily a visit at that point. That's a sharing of custody. That's just my personal opinion, because you're moving into, so that I think that's a whole nother issue that I think that has a different type of conversation, because you're going to have conflict, I think, throughout. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed now, because they're four. If this continues and they get older, it will just, and anytime children are in conflict, you will see behavioral issues, because they're not quite sure who's in charge. And then they can triangulate, meaning that their mind don't actually understand fully what triangulation means. And what that means is that they'll go with whatever person at that time will fit their needs and talk about the other person. Now, they may not have the words at four, but the behavior might be there. Like, the only will be nice and accepting if you let them do what they want to do, and cry and fall out if you tap their hand or something like that, if they did something wrong. What this turns out to be when they get older is that they start doing more mean-spirited things when they're trying to get their needs met. So I think the households need to figure out, is there agreement? Here are some non-negotiable things. I'll give you an example. When I'm doing um, parents who are divorced or separated, the idea is if they're on punishment in one house, they're on punishment when they go over to the other house. Consistency.
Amen.
The problem is sometimes is that they may be in punishment in one house, and then when they go to the other house, they don't recognize the punishment because the behavior did not happen there. But you still have the same child. And both parents have been in agreement of that. Let's look at kids. Even when they go to grandparents' house, I say the grandparents got to be on page with the parents and vice versa. Everybody, if it's a village, the village understands the rules.
Right.
You know, so that's kind of what I would say.
Amen. That was an awesome answer, and it answered a whole lot of fronts because we do have those situations now during COVID where the living situation might not be the same
That's right.
as it was before. The guardians might not be the same as
That's right.
they were before. So thank you for addressing that really from every angle. My question is a different one because I completely agree that we need to make sure that we keep routine for them. I think the thing that is so different before COVID, the routine I was trying to keep was making sure we carved out quality time to spend together, that we focused on ways to spend time together. And I think now during COVID, we need to figure out some clear, identified ways to spend time apart so people don't feel like they're just on top of each other at every minute, at every time. Like Minister Shawnette was saying, we have an 18-year-old, and he doesn't want us in his business at every minute. You know, my children have both been living on campus, and they're used to having autonomy. So how do we help them at every age, even if they're little, and all the way up to the ages of young adults? How do we figure out how to have some space while we're in the same space?
So it's a good question. You know, I was talking with my husband about this, and we were laughing about growing up. I think I grew up in my mother, and she's in the same house now. We all lived in about 800 square foot house. Okay, 800 square foot. And I think Dr. Phil, my husband, his, 5, kids, they lived in probably something less. But yet, how did you, kind of your alone time was, I think when I would sometimes go somewhere in a corner and read, or when I got on my mom's nerves, she would say, you better go find something to play with. Okay, so that was her nice way of saying I had reached her max. And I will go find something to play with. Okay, but so I think that's what you're speaking to, Sister Mackenzie, is that there is, it's just, even if it's something that they can do on their own, I think that's about the best that you can do at this point. I think, in terms of alone time, because they're still in your home. I think there's only so much privacy they're going to have. There's only so many, but, it's, if they want to be on the phone in their own room, okay, but they can't be in there all day. It's your house. If you got things you want them to do, then they have to realize this is temporary. They have to think of it like a hotel or something. They're 18 or whatever. They're there for a temporary, period of time. What do they have to do to adjust? Not that you adjust and stretch your boundaries too much in the house that you're in.
That's a good answer.
Right?
Temporary.
All that temporary, and I'm not stretching my boundaries.
No way.
Well,
no way.
Speaking of stretching boundaries, since we got a little bit of a late start, is it okay with you guys if we go over by maybe 10 minutes? Do we have time?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll plan to stay on until 12:10 if that's all right.
Okay.
All right. Next question.
Anybody else?
I guess for me, you talked about having that peace of God's head.
You froze for a minute, so repeat it again.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
You talked about parents having that peace of God and guarding their hearts and minds, so they can be 2 steps ahead of the worry for the kids. And that just made me think of like the whole put your mask on first mentality.
That's right.
So I guess my question would be, what are some tips to kind of help parents, preparation, when they're in that moment, when they are disciplining or whatever, they're really going off their own stress instead of assessing the situation, how can they better prepare for those moments to put their mask on first before they put their kids mask
Nice.
That's
on?
that's absolutely, that's an excellent question. And basically
Yes.
what you're saying is, what are the strategies, right, that a
Yeah.
parent needs to have to be proactive before
Yes.
that discipline situation comes up? Because one of the things I realize is that when we think in advance that we know they're going to be behavioral problems, what's going to kind of be my normal response? And I try to get parents into saying, have already on deck your normal response to a medium situation, to even a severe situation. So when it hits, you'll kind of go into that mode. Now, sometimes there are going to be responses that over the top that a child has done that you didn't prepare for. And those are extremes. That's acceptable for however you react in that extreme situation. But usually you're kind of prepared. So the strategies, one is that who do you have in your circle or amongst yourself or during your prayer time to actually put on the table what concerns you? Because often what we do is we don't acknowledge that something is bothering us, and then that's when we explode, and we may explode on the wrong person. So, that's where I think during our prayer time is when they say put everything on the altar. You put everything and say, okay, Lord, I don't know how I'm gonna make my rent next month. I don't know how, we don't have enough food for the week. I don't know, how I'm going to help my kids do their homework. These assignments that they're giving, I don't know if I'm doing them right. I don't know if they're going to fall behind in school, and I'm concerned about preparing them to go to college, and so all these things I'm concerned about. And so that's one of the things that I think we get that off our chest and give it to someone that can handle it. And then you have always good friends and support systems that, you don't have to tell all your business, but just say, there's some of the things I'm concerned about. I need you to keep me lifted up in prayer, or just for me to be able to get it out and talk about it, and figuring out, how can I look at resources and things. And I would say, as a church, whatever you can do to encourage your membership to, and maybe feel comfortable about talking more about what's concerning them personally about it. I wouldn't necessarily do it with the children present. I think it's a time sometimes where I don't know. And I know they don't have a lot of privacy, but I say sometimes they have a cell phone. They can go out into a car. They can go outside in the backyard, whatever they have to do to be able to have this conversation. But just so that that gets out, so they don't have to hold it in and try to figure out how to figure that out. So I think the strategy of recognizing first what's wrong, having a consistent way of addressing that can minimize quick reactive responses. That gets at what you're talking about in terms of, not following your normal schedule on how you're going to address a behavioral situation. Mhm.
I have another one as well because as in my introduction, I'm executive with Kids at Hope, so I deal a lot with the youth in the community, and you kind of hit on a lot of things, a lot of concerns that I've been having as far as with our youth, as falling behind academically, also, every home isn't a safe home.
That's
Every
right.
home
That's
isn't
right.
a godly home. So we're
Absolutely.
looking at it as us praying and
That's right.
how we can go to God, and we have friends that we can ask to lift us up, encourage us, that support system. Is every home is not that particular home.
That's right. That's right.
And so then when you have the anxiety of the parents, the stress of the parents, you have an irritable child, because they can't go out, they can't do things. In your field, would you say child abuse probably occur more? We will probably see a lot of that now.
There is a lot of discussion right now about the increase of child abuse. I always put on the table that probably that child was already dealing with abuse situation before COVID. And I think that's just a reality. In our community, we have a child abuse in the same ways that other communities. Just so that we're clear, the research shows we don't abuse our children more than everybody else. And I think the research had been misquoted. some of the research that they stated was problematic and wrong. And so often what they would say is they were equating our use sometimes of physical discipline and automatically saying every time a parent used it, they were engaging in physical abuse. And that is not true.
Right.
So the numbers got conflated. And the reason why I think it's important stating that is it then gives the impression sometimes that our community in particular, or communities that struggle, say financially or what have you, that they're more at risk for abusing children than others. I do think, though, that it's a combination of things that cause child abuse. I think, though, if we look at the whole family interactions before COVID, we will find out that there were some issues and concerns in terms of how parents were dealing with their children's needs. Abuse often happens when the parent is not 2 steps ahead emotionally. The parent is 1 step behind.
Mm.
And so when the parent is 1 step behind, or the parent is at the same level as the child on how they're how they're responding to situations, that means when you're a peer, you're going to act like a peer. So every time the child gets mad, you get mad. Every time the child swings, you swing back, and so you're on the same level. So I would say all those interactions probably were happening before COVID. And when you're in a situation in a tight space, it just explodes. So I think, reaching out right now on families who's probably always had struggles. The other thing I think the point you raise is that the majority of families may not be associated with a church in our community. We know that, right? So because of that, how do we as a community, a church community, have more action steps in our prayers? So although we're praying for our community, how does that translate into action steps? Because it should manifest in the physical world on what we're praying about. So we're concerned about what's happening in our families, in our homes when God is not present, or they don't have, we perceive God is not present, because we don't always know that. See, we think because someone may not be a member of our church that they don't have a relationship with God, and we know that they do, right? Because we know that how we have operated as a people. We haven't always been able to go to church. Back during slavery, they went maybe once a month and they gathered at a tree and they did whatever. And so we know that they may know God is, but right now they're just struggling and trying to make things happen, right? So our actions can help lead the way. I think that's how do we come up with more action steps to show love and model what we think things should be?
Yes.
As an educator, I'm an elementary school teacher, and I struggle with getting parents to take ownership of their child's behavior. What would you recommend? Instead of blaming me, I would rather for them to say what my child did. So how do you kind of like approach our community or our culture with looking at your inside? Because we really don't do that.
Yes, and as a clinician, I spend a lot of time in particularly counseling parents is what I spend a lot of time in. And before I even ask them to look inside, I just want to know about who they are. And I think that, unfortunately, we have a position in parenting in the majority culture in psychology and counseling, is that we believe the child is always right and the parent is wrong. So when that model is sent forth first, then we don't really get a good feel of who this parent is. I go in with the perspective, and just probably like you, is that no, I believe first that the parent is a competent parent. I establish competency as the parent is deciding to get up in the morning and take care of their children, however they're defining it. Now, maybe as I think a conversation with Pastor McKenzie, they may need some realignment in what they think. They may need some adjustment in that thinking. And that's how we want to look at that. And once we put that on it, okay, maybe we can do a little adjusting here. And I think now, once I started doing that in therapy in particular, the floodgates come open. You don't have to worry about them. They'll tell you everything they think they did wrong. They'll go back 15, 20. I don't have enough couches. And enough minutes on my phone to get through all of what they're feeling and thinking, because I first basically communicated that, I love them. I think that they're competent, doing the best that they can with their kids. And where can we start from there? And I think you'll get what you need at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. No, I think all of these things are going to be important for you all as a church community. I mean, I think that the parenting part, the discipline part is key, because I agree that, we do want to minimize any forms of abuse in our families. And anytime we're in a crisis point, it can put things at risk if things were already risky to begin with. And I think it's to begin with, how can we be proactive so the next time this occurs, these families are stronger, and they have the skills and tools to weather the storm. That's how do we put what, be anxious for nothing? How do we translate that to a parent in our congregation, in our community, most important, in our community, more so than the congregation, because our community needs us. So how do we show, model, and get them that they too, because that's how we bring them to Christ. It's what we model love in the ways in which we speak into them, but we speak into them by what they need. And sometimes we may have to go in prayer and find out exactly what that is. So that's what, go ahead.
I do have another question. So we are, it might be a lot the same, but a lot different. We're going to be adjusting to a new way of thinking, a new norm. Far as with working with our children and our youth, what would you suggest to prepare them for that? We are even going into our stores. We got 6 feet, so I'm telling my kids, give people their space,
That's right.
So just getting them to adjust to this new norm, because they're just used to responding. They're used to doing things a certain way. So trying to get them to adapt to what's going to be new, it's not going to be the same. So how do we prepare them for this change, especially younger children? Because again, kind of running it with having a schedule, routine.
That's right.
It's just what our norm was will never be our norm again.
That's right. All right. And again, what we said before, our norm for adults, but understanding with children, what you just said is that just because society creates rules, we know it takes a while for a child to understand the rule, right? Because we have to know developmentally where they are. So that's where I started out with the mask. That's something simple, and then we work on the social distancing after that. We get them protected first. And then we say, now the reason why you got to wear this mask. And then once they start understanding that, it helps them to keep the social distancing, I think, first. And then we know we may have to work at that a little bit with some patience and keep reminding them the importance. But you know what? Children see what you do. And I think one of the things in helping with parents is, like, if the parents are doing it, the child generally is supposed to be right beside the parent. If they're little ones, and if they're teenagers, they shouldn't be too far, out. And so if you're doing it, then probably they're going to do it too, or you demand that they do it too.
Right.
That's another thing you can do.
Right.
I'll turn this back over to you, Sister Mackenzie.
Okay. Well, I think that we're about at the end of our time. And I want to thank everybody so much. I know that for some reason, Zoom has just been doing its own thing this morning.
Yes.
But I'm so thankful that we have a media ministry that is just dedicated, because they just kept pushing and pushing. Please let's clap them up. A lot of times people have media difficulty. They assume that the people are not doing what they need to do. And I just want to thank God for our media ministry that is driving this Zoom bus today.
Yes.
So I am really, really, really thankful for that. And I'm thankful for each of you panelists And I'm so thankful
Thank
for
you.
you, Dr. Carla.
Thank you,
And I'm
Dr.
thankful to
Yeah.
my pastor
Appreciate
husband
it.
that we could do this, and my daughter who's sitting beside me, making sure we work through stuff on this end. So, I mean, yes, thank you. Amen. Wait again, Jamila. Yay.
Yay.
Amen. Amen. I just have such thankfulness in my heart that we were able to get together and connect and just share and be open, because to me, there's no point in fronting.
Right.
We either
Right.
need to be real and solve
right.
real problems and be
That's right.
transparent and let people know that nobody can do this by themselves.
That's right.
This is not, I did so great and let me share it with you. This is, we all need help. Nobody
Amen.
does this alone. So don't feel
Amen.
like you have to. Amen.
That's right.
Amen.
To God be the glory. I'm
Amen.
just so pleased. My
Yes.
heart is overjoyed.
Yes.
I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful Mother's Day, because it
Yes.
takes a whole village for
Yes.
parenting and mothering and
Yeah.
fathering to work. And it doesn't matter whether you have children of your own biologically or whether you're just holding everybody's children in your heart.
Yes.
We all have a stake in this.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
I just am thankful, thankful, thankful. And I wish you all just a blessed, wonderful weekend.
Yes.
Amen.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
You
Mother's
too.
Day.
Amen.
Mm.
All right, we're out.